over here. And our sixth problem is a trig problem or trigonometry problem, and it's asking us to evaluate the expression secant negative pi over 3. And there are a couple ways of doing it, but the most common way, or the easiest way, would be the following two ways. So I'm just going to say method 1 or in method 2. But first, we need to know what's a secant. So we know a secant of an angle is equals to 1 over the cos of an angle. So secant is the reciprocal function of the function cosine. And also, another thing we need to know is about the special triangles, the two special triangles, the 36C90 special triangle and the 4545 special triangle. But we're going to go over the special triangle later in the question. So our first method, our method 1, is to use identity trig, or is to use trig identity functions to find the answer. So the method 1 is that we know we need to find secant of negative pi over 3. And we also know that the secant of an angle is equals to 1 over the cos of an angle. So we know secant of negative pi over 3 is equals to 1 over the cos of negative pi over 3. And we also know that the cosine of an angle, the cosine of an angle is equals to the cosine of an angle with a negative sign on it. So based on this function, we know that the secant of negative pi over 3 is also equals to this cosine of pi over 3 and equals to the secant of pi over 3. Pi over 3. So from that we know, and next we're going to try to find the cosine of pi over 3, and you're trying to find the cosine of pi over 3, we're going to use a special triangle right over here. The special triangle is a right angle triangle, and the hypotenuse is 2, and the two sides is √3 and 1 respectively. And this angle right over here is pi over 3, and this angle right over here is pi over 6. And we know that the cosine of an angle is equals to adjacent over hypotenuse. And by the way, the secant of an angle is equals to hypotenuse over adjacent, because the secant function is the reciprocal of the cosine function. So you just reverse the top and bottom of the fraction. And right now we know the adjacent of pi over 3 is 1, and the hypotenuse of pi over 3 is 2. So we know cos of pi over 3 is 1 over 2. And then I also know the secant of pi over 3 is 1 over the cos of pi over 3. So we know that the secant of pi over 3, or the negative pi over 3, is equals to the secant of pi over 3 is equals to 1 over 2, which is equals to 2. Okay, so that's our first way of finding the secant of a function. And let's use our method 2 of finding the secant of a function. Method 2 of finding the secant of function. Again, we know that the secant of negative pi over 3, the secant of negative pi over 3 is equals to the secant of pi over 3. And we know the secant of a function is hypotenuse over adjacent. And from the special triangle here, for the angle pi over 3, we know the hypotenuse is 2, the hypotenuse is 2, and we know the adjacent is 1, the adjacent is 1. So we know the secant of negative pi over 3 is equals to, the secant of pi over 3 is equals to 2. So yes, this is how we find the value of the secant of negative pi over 3. Now let's look at our sample solution here. Yes, they basically used the similar method to finding the secant, or to finding the reference angle, and yes. And the value is 2. Perfect. We should say, great job. The solution is correct. Solution is correct.